Welcome to the Screencast-O-Matic video version of the end of the notes for 9.6 on the quadratic formula. Just to remind you, the quadratic formula is useful when you have a quadratic equation that you're trying to find the x values for. So the form of a quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c. And you know those a, b, and c values from when we did factoring. So those are the same things. So we were working through, and we had gone through and looked at the quadratic formula, which is negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. And this is something we looked at a song video, which I will send you the link for. This is just a formula that you have to memorize, and you have to know how to use it. We had looked at the procedure for solving for the x values using the quadratic formula, but we'll let the examples speak for themselves, and you can refer back to these notes if you need procedures. So I think we had worked through these couple of examples, or maybe not, but let's go ahead and work through them again so that you can see them. I'm going to ask you to solve x squared minus x minus 12 by using the quadratic formula. So we always write down the quadratic formula first. X is negative b plus or minus, meaning that you'll get two answers, one negative b plus and one negative b minus. And then b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so a is equal to 1, b is equal to negative 1, and c is equal to negative 12. Let's put a negative sign in there. Okay, so once we've identified a, b, and c, we're going to just substitute in. So the two x values that are going to solve this equation are negative b, which is negative 1, plus or minus square root of negative 1 squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is negative 12. And all of that is over 2 times a, which is 2 times 1. So x is equal to, a negative of a negative 1 is positive 1, plus or minus negative 1 squared is a positive 1, plus negative 4 times 1 times negative 12 is 48. That's over 2. We can simplify this by saying 1 plus or minus square root of 49 over 2. You know what square root of 49 is. So that's 1 plus or minus 7 over 2. Okay, now this plus or minus is going to cause us to do two different solutions. And that'll be 1 plus 7 over 2, which is 4, and 1 minus 7 over 2, which is negative 6 over 2, which is negative 3. So our solution set is negative 3 and 4. Okay, we can, of course, use the quadratic formula on hairier looking problems. So what do we do first? We have to have that quadratic equation in a form where it's x squared plus an x term plus a constant is equal to 0. So we're going to subtract 7x from both sides. 2x squared minus 7x minus 15 is equal to 0. And so a is equal to 2, b is equal to negative 7, and c is equal to negative 15. So we write down the quadratic equation. x is equal to negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac. We do our all over 2a. And then we do our substitution. So x is equal to negative of negative 7 plus or minus square root of b squared is negative 7 squared minus 4 times 2 times a negative 15 all over 2 times 2. So x is equal to 7, because that goes to a positive 7, plus or minus square root of 49 plus 120 over 4. So that equals 7 plus or minus square root of 169 over 4. And the square root of 169 is actually an integer number. That's 7 plus or minus 13 over 4. So then we have our two solutions. 7 plus 13 over 4 is 7 plus 13 over 4 is 5. And 7 minus 13 over 4 is negative 6 over 4, which is negative 3 over 2. So our solution set here looks like x is equal to negative 3 halves and 5. Alright, so let's look for a second at the types of answers that we might get underneath, when we consider what goes underneath the radical. So, I've lost my cursor here. Got it back. Okay, rational answers will have a positive perfect square under the radical. So for example, this 9 is positive and it's a perfect square. So when you take the square root of 9, you get an integer. And actually these kinds of problems could have been factored. Okay, the second kind is irrational. And these numbers have a positive number, but it's not a perfect square under the radical. And an example of that would be, say you simplified b squared minus 4ac and you got a 2. And you would get an approximate answer. And if you put this into your calculator, this little symbol here means approximate. So approximation. So if you put that into your calculator and get a decimal, that's an approximate. Okay, the third kind that you could get is if you have a negative number under the radical. And this would be a non-real answer. And all you would put there, because the square root of 13 is not a number as far as you're concerned in Algebra 1, the answer is not real. Okay, let's work some examples. Okay, this is in descending order. We can identify A, which is 4, B is negative 2, and C is negative 7. So our quadratic is negative b plus or minus square root of b, that's a b, squared minus 4ac, all over 2a. So negative b is a negative of negative 2, plus or minus square root of negative 2 squared minus 4 times negative 7 is c. And that's all over 2 times 4. Plug and chug. 2 plus or minus Square root, negative 2 squared is 4. 4 times 7 is a positive 112, and that is over 8. So x is 2 plus or minus square root of 116 over 8. Since 116 is not a perfect square, I'm going to have you leave this just as it is. And your solution set you can write as 2 plus or minus square root of 116 over 8. You could also split this into 2 because it's going to be 2 plus root 16, 116, and 2 minus root 16. I will accept this form of the answer, but I want you to see that there are actually 2 roots here. One of these is a plus and one of these is a minus. Okay, let's move on to this problem. A is 1, B is 4, C is 12. So you have x is equal to negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So x is equal to negative 4 plus or minus 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times 12, which is c, all over 2 times 1. So x is negative 4 plus or minus 16 minus 48 over 2, which is negative 4 plus or minus square root of negative 32 over 2. So there's a square root of a negative. So this answer is not real. Okay, let's do this one. There's a quadratic that's embedded in this, so we're going to factor to find it, and then we're going to do the quadratic. So negative 3 x squared plus 2x plus 7 is equal to 0. I've just factored a negative 3. Matter of fact, that's a minus sign. So let me fix that. When you factor a negative 3, you get x squared plus 2x minus 7. So x is equal to negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So x is equal to, so we are solving that trinomial. It's going to be negative 2 plus or minus square root of 2 squared minus 4 dot 1 dot negative 7 is c, all over 2 times 1. So that's 4 plus 28 over 2, which is square root of 32 over 2. So there's our answer. X is equal to negative 2 minus root 32 over 2 and 2 plus root 32 over 2. One more. Let's see if I can do it in a minute. We have to reorder this, so I'm going to make you another tiny video so that you can see this last problem worked.